Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. I know when that Hotline Fling, that can only mean one thing, deck tech. Okay, that was awful. I'm so sorry, but I had to do it. And if you're not sure what that reference is, well, you might not have been on the internet in 2015. But the commander for this deck did not come out in 2015. In fact, it came out this year, very recently actually, with Mr. Orfeo the Boulder. And don't worry, I'll explain why this deck is called Hotline Fling. Regardless, Mr. Orfeo the Boulder is not only one of the most amazing names of all time of any Magic card, it is also a fantastic commander for this deck concept. So, the Boulder is a 2/4 Rhino Warrior that costs 1 black, red, green. And he has, whenever you attack, double target creature's power until end of turn. That's it. That's all this commander needs to be an awesome Hotline Fling commander. Though this commander is very simple, the way that this is worded actually works out pretty perfectly. This is an attack trigger, but it is an easier attack trigger to meet. Because again, keep in mind it says whenever you attack. It does not specify that you need to attack with this creature or any number of creatures. Just whenever you attack with any creature, you get to double up target creature's power until end of turn. So we can hold our commander back and we don't need to put our commander in the red zone unless we really want to. Also on top of that, again, we can double any creature's power, including one that is not attacking. So if we want to keep that creature back, we can, but yeah, sometimes we want to swing with a giant creature, but other times we'd like that creature protected because we've got other plans for it. But before we get to those plans, one thing real quick, every single card in this deck is less than $1, so it's a very budget-friendly deck. And now with that said, let's talk about those plans. And that's where we get to the namesake card for this deck with Fling. Fling is an instant for 1 in a red, and it says, as additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. Fling deals damage equal to the sacrifice creature's power to any target. So yes, we can utilize creatures, in combat and doubling their power to hopefully get some damage through, but we can also just say, you know what, it might be quicker just to chuck this creature at your face. Or maybe I'll do both. Maybe I'll hit you with that creature that I doubled the power on and also chuck it at your face afterwards. And yeah, believe me, we already have some high power creatures in this deck, and when we can double up their power, things get really out of hand. So there are definitely times where a single Fling can definitely take out a player or get them very, very, very close. And of course, we're running more than just one Fling. I mean, even one of our lands is a Fling with Kazul's Fury. It does the exact same thing, but at instant speed, and it costs 2 in a red. Instant speed is especially good if we want to utilize this during combat, or if we want to respond if an opponent is trying to take our creature out. And then Rite of Consumption might be sorcery speed, but it can make a massive impact. It has us sacrifice a creature, then it's going to deal damage equal to the sacrifice creature's power to target player, which again is going to be our target the vast majority of the time, and we gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. I guess I should have mentioned with Fling and with Kazul's Fury and with some of these other effects as well, yeah, many of them can ping creatures, but the vast majority of the time, we're going to be taking a giant creature and chucking it at an opponent's face. And then Essence Harvest actually doesn't even have us sacrifice one of our giant creatures. We get to keep it in play. It says target player loses X life and you gain X life for X of the greatest power among creatures you control. So yeah, this one can be especially potent, can gain us a ton of life, and again, we can utilize that creature again for something else. And speaking of which, we've also got Flesh and Blood, and this can help us out in multiple ways. It's a fuse card, so we can cast either half or both. Flesh says, exile target creature card from a graveyard, put X counters on target creature, where X is the power of the card you exile. Again, we've got a lot of high power creatures in this deck, so we can utilize those creatures once they're in our graveyard, after we maybe flung them at someone, to utilize their power to get more counters on another creature in play to make it even larger. And then Blood says, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. So yeah, in combination, these can do a massive amount of damage. Next up, a very simple but very effective card is Soul's Fire. It says target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to any target. And then Gravitic Punch is basically a sorcery version of this, but at sorcery speed, but it also has Jumpstart. So we can cast it again from our graveyard by discarding a card and paying its cost, and yeah, this can just take out a player on its own essentially by being able to cast it twice with a massive creature. Moving on, we've also got some equipment that can help us out with things like Sure Strike Titan, Mage Slayer, and Fiend Lash. The Trident has Equip 4, and it has Equipped creature has First Strike and tap unattached Sure Strike Trident. This creature deals damage equal to its power to target player. So this is basically a repeatable fling effect for 4, and yeah, this can dish out a lot of damage throughout the game. Speaking of which, Mage Slayer says whenever equipped creature attacks, it deals damage equal to its power to defending player. So this is kind of like a free fling effect on attack, but again, it doesn't make us sacrifice the creature, so it's just getting additional damage through for free. And again, we can stack those attack triggers to ensure that we're doubling up power first. Next up, Fiend Lash says equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has reach, so yeah, this can increase our creature's power even more. Again, consider that double power, that's basically +4/+0. And then it says whenever equipped creature is dealt damage, it deals damage equal to its power to target player or planeswalker. So our opponents are going to have a very tough time blocking, especially since they can't really team block, because if they do, for each individual instance of damage that is dealt to our creature, it is dealing damage to a player based on its power, which we can actually utilize to our advantage. Again, if we're actually going to work with another player to try to take another one down, we can say, hey, you've got a couple of small tokens in play. How about you block my massive creature so I can ping that other player for a ton? And finally, two other ways to dish out a massive amount of damage throughout the game to our opponents are with cards like Stalking Vengeance and Warstorm Surge. Stalking Vengeance says whenever another creature you control dies, it deals damage equal to its power to target player. This obviously can be especially effective with our fling effects that actually make us sacrifice the creature because, well, hey, we doubled up our creature's power, we just flung it at a player, and now we are also dishing out additional damage, basically double that damage again to that player. And then Warstorm Surge can help us out on the other end of things. It says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So now, even without flinging a creature, just right when it comes into play, we can still dish out a ton of damage to anything we want. Usually, again, opponents' faces. And my goodness, do we have a lot of power in this deck. I mean, let's start with Primeval Protector, a 10/10 avatar that does cost 10 and a green, so 11 mana, but not really. Because it's going to cost 1 less gas for each creature our opponents control, and yeah, usually this can just be basically like Green's Blasphemous Act where it just costs a single mana. And of course, on top of that, when it enters the battlefield, we get a ++1 counter on each other creature we control, so we make our creatures even bigger. Moving on, we've got Grun the Lonely King, a 5/5/8 warrior that has Kicker 3, and if we kick it, it enters with 5 ++1 counters on it. So if we've got the mana for it, yeah, we definitely want to kick it. A 10/10, first of all, is huge, and of course, on top of that, whenever Grun attacks alone, double its power and toughness until end of turn. So when we swing with this, it becomes a 20/20. Then our commander says, hey, would you like to double your power again? So Grun on its own, again, if we kicked it, if we swung and our commander's in play, that's a 40 power creature. Yeah, even if that doesn't get through in combat, just flinging it at one player is pretty much going to take them out. And speaking of a creature that can easily take players out, let's talk about Realm Seekers. It's a 0/0 Elf Scout that's going to enter the battlefield with X +1 counters on it, where X is the total number of cards in all players' hands. And if we really want to, we can pay 2 and a green to remove a counter from it to search our library for a land card, get into our hand, then shuffle our library. But yeah, I mean, this thing entering the battlefield, just picture every player with, oh, I don't know, even just 4 cards in their hand. Okay, 4. This is a 16/16. Go to combat, attack with something, double that to 32, and fling this. And of course, yeah, this could easily be well over 20 power as well, because players like to draw cards, who knew? Next up, we've got a 3-mana creature that can get massive in absolutely no time with Wilderness Elemental. It's a star 3 with Trample that's power is equal to the number of non-basic lands our opponents control. In a multiplayer format like Commander, yeah, that number can increase rather quickly, so we can get a ton of power value out of this 3-mana creature. And speaking of getting value out of creatures, well, Beast of Burden is a star, and its power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures in play. So yeah, if your friends got that token deck going, well, they're gonna be in big trouble. And speaking of tokens, Paradox Zone is a fantastic card for this deck. It's gonna enter the battlefield with a growth counter on it. And then at the beginning of our end step, we double the number of growth counters on Paradox Zone, then we create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. We put X counters on it, where X the number of growth counters on Paradox Zone. So basically on our first end step, we're going to get a 2/2, then a 4/4, then an 8/8, and you see where this is going. We keep getting more and more tokens as the game progresses, and they keep getting twice as large. which of course then, we can double up and easily fling at a player for lethal. Next up though, we've got Night Howler, which can help us out in multiple ways. It's a 0/0, but it's got Bestow for 2 black, so we can essentially put it on another creature, basically as an aura, and it says, an enchanted creature gets +X for X the number of creature cards in all graveyards. Yeah, again, in a multiplayer format like Commander, that number can grow very quickly. So yeah, when this is bestowed on a creature, that creature can just become massive in absolutely no time, or even more massive than it already was. And of course, on top of that, when that creature does die, it just becomes Night Howler, the creature. So we can essentially utilize this to pump a creature, and then also just be a giant creature on its own. Both are great for us to double power and fling. But as good as all these cards have been so far, there is one in my opinion that stands above the rest, and that is the Golden Pig of this deck. And the Golden Pig of this deck, the number 1 card out of 99, is Bone Horde. Bone Horde is an equipment that costs 4 and it costs 2 to equip, and it has Living Weapon. So when it enters the battlefield, we create a 0/0 black Phyrexian Germ creature token, then we attach this to it. The equipped creature gets +X for X the number of creature cards in all graveyards. So this card is a lot like Night Howler, but in my opinion, even better. First up, just by playing this, we get a massive creature again based on the number of creature cards in all graveyards. So yeah, 4 mana for just that. That's incredible. So yeah, just double up that creature's power, maybe swing with it, maybe fling it at someone. Great. Once that germ is gone, or even if that germ's not gone yet, well, we can just pay 2 to attach this to any of our other creatures. Again, just giving that creature a massive boost. Then, we move to combat, double that creature's power to an absurd amount, fling it at someone, that player's probably out of the game, and then, yeah, we get to utilize our equipment again. So we can attach it to yet another creature to make that creature even more massive, to double it up to, fling it again, and you see where this is going. Not only is this a massive creature just on its own, but also, yes, this thing can just pump creatures to absurd amounts and easily make them into either a 2-shot or a 1-shot KO. So yeah, Bone Horde, in my opinion, you have earned the title of Golden Pig of this deck. Next up though, we've got some creatures that can grow throughout the game in a different way with cards like Scoop Mob, Taurian Mauler, and Forgotten Ancient. Scoop Mob is an incredibly low to the ground creature that can dish out a ton of pain in this deck. It's a 1/1 insect for just a green. But it also says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 5 or more lands, put 4+1 counters on Scoop Mob. Obviously we are in green, so we've got plenty of ways to get more and more lands into play. So yeah, we can get to 5 lands very quickly, and then this just starts growing and growing and growing. It becomes a 5/5, then a 9/9, then a 13/13, just growing turn after turn after turn. And yeah, then doubling up its power and flinging it, that can be a lot of fun. Speaking of which, Taurian Mauler can get massive in no time as well. A 2/2 shapeshifter with changeling that says, whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may put a +1 counter on Taurian Mauler. Again, in a format like Commander, you've got 3 opponents, so have fun benefiting off of all these spells that they're casting. And you can actually benefit off of everyone's spells, including your own, with Forgotten Ancient. It says, whenever a player casts a spell, you may put a +1 counter on Forgotten Ancient. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may move any number of counters from Forgotten Ancient onto other creatures. So yeah, this can become massive in absolutely no time, but you can also just move those counters onto something else to make it even bigger, and then, double up the counters and fling that, while also gaining more and more counters on this to do that again. And then finally, some creatures that can just become absurdly large, absurdly quickly. Let's talk about Sengir the Dark Baron, Vulturous Zombie, and Hamlet Bat Goliath. Sengir is a 4/4 Vampire Noble with flying that says, whenever the creature dies, put 2+1 counters on Sengir the Dark Baron. On top of that, whenever another player loses the game, you gain life equal to that player's life total as the turn began. This thing grows incredibly fast. Again, that's 2 counters for any creature dying. It does not say non-token, it doesn't say your opponent's creatures, any creature. And of course, on top of that, if this is still in play while you take out an opponent and say flinging something else at an opponent, you gain a ton of life because of that. Or should I say, however much life that player had, but yeah, you can fling some massive things at opponents to gain a lot of life with this. And speaking of massive, Vulturous Zombie is a 3/3 flying plant zombie, and it says, whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a counter on Vulturous Zombie. Keep in mind, this says whenever a card is put into a graveyard from anywhere, not a creature, a card. So obviously, like Sengir, it counts creatures, but it also counts, when your opponents play spells, like instants and sorceries, those go right to your graveyard, or if that player gets milled, or, if they surveil, etc, etc, etc. This thing can get huge in no time. Speaking of which, one that your opponents really have to be careful against is Hamlet Bat Goliath. It's a 6/6 giant warrior that says, whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you may put X counters on Hamlet Bat Goliath, where X is that creature's power. So first up, this deck is centered around massive creatures, so have this in play, maybe play Primeval Protector, cool, 10 counters. Yeah, that's great, but on top of that, this counts your opponent's playing creatures as well, so this thing can be just a 1-shot KO on its own at a certain point without even having to double its power, but yeah, you get to do that as well. Next up, we also have some creatures that can benefit off of our other massive creatures like Rubblebelt Rioters, Tuya Bearclaw, and Freelance Muscle. Rubblebelt Rioters is a 0/4 human berserker with haste that has, when it attacks, it gets +X+0 until end of turn, where X the greatest power among creatures you control. So whatever our largest creature in play is, this essentially becomes just as large, and again, twice as large essentially if we decide to double that and actually sacrifice this, which we might do a lot of the time because, you know, this creature only costs 3 mana and it might not survive combat, so let's fling it at someone for a ton of damage. And speaking of a 3 mana creature, we've got Tuya Bearclaw, a 2/2 human warrior that says, when it attacks, it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X the greatest power among other creatures you control. So this one actually does get a toughness boost as well, which again is huge in protecting in combat, and yeah, still a fantastic way to fling something at an opponent for a ton of damage and not a lot of mana. Moving on, we've got another new Rhino friend from New Capenna with Freelance Muscle. It says whenever it attacks or blocks, it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X the greatest power and or toughness among other creatures you control. So again, somewhat similar to these other effects, but different, but still a fantastic thing to fling. And finally, 2 other cards that work in different ways, but also take advantage of massive creatures on the field. Let's talk about Arnie Brokenbrow and Miming Slime. Arnie is a 3/3 human berserker with haste that has Boast for 1. It says you may change Arnie Brokenbrow's base power to 1 plus the greatest power among other creatures you control until end of turn. And again with Boast, we basically activate this when we attack with it. So yes, this does cost 1 mana, but that's going to be well worth it because this thing can get massive. Obviously, I mean, it's going to be even bigger than our biggest creature because we get that +1, which is again basically a +2 thanks to that doubling of power thanks to our commander. And speaking of doubling, well, Miming Slime can really take advantage of our commander's doubling power. It's a sorcery that says create an XX green ooze creature token where X the greatest power among creatures you control. So think about this scenario. We have, say, Primeval Protector in play, again a 10/10. We go to combat and we attack with something. Cool, we double up Primeval Protector's power. Now it has 20 power. Great. After combat, we cast this, and the greatest power that we have in play is 20. Even though Primeval Protector would go back down to a 10/10, it still at that point is 20. So we make a 20/20 ooze, and then next turn with our ooze, let's go to combat, make it into a 40/40, and fling it at someone's face. Yeah, for just 3 mana, this card can make a massive impact. And speaking of massive and massive impacts, let's talk about Aggressive Mammoth and Dragon Throne of Tarkir, which can help us get a ton of damage through in combat. Yeah, we can get damage through in combat outside of just flinging things. Aggressive Mammoth is an 8/8 elephant for just 6 mana. It's got Trample, and it says other creatures you control have Trample. So this can help us push through a ton of damage, and again, this can just be a great thing to swing with and to fling itself. And then next up, we've got Dragon Throne of Tarkir, an equipment that has equip 3, and it says equip creature as defender and pay 2, tap. Other creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is this creature's power. Again, the way that our commander is worded comes in key with this. Because we don't have to actually attack with a creature that we're doubling the power of, well, we attack with probably all of our creatures, and then we don't attack with the one that has defender that's got this equipped to it. And then we double up this creature's power thanks to our commander's trigger, and then we activate this for just 2 mana. So again, example I keep going back to, Primeval Protector. It's a 10/10 that becomes a 20/20, and then for 2 mana, we give all of our creatures +20/+20 and trample until end of turn. Yeah, eat your heart out, Overrun. But of course, we need to actually get to all these amazing cards, and we can actually take advantage of our creature's power to do so with cards like Mask of Grizzlebrand, Doomweaver, and Disciple of Bolas. Mask of Grizzlebrand says equip creature has flying and lifelink, and yeah, that can be incredibly deadly with these massive creatures, helping them get through in combat, and it can also gain us a ton of life, which is going to be very nice, because it also says whenever equipped creature dies, you may pay X life, where X is its power. If you do, draw X cards. So this can be a fantastic, repeatable way to get creatures through, gain a ton of life, and draw an absurd amount of cards. Speaking of an absurd amount of cards and repeatable, Doomweaver. It's a 1/8 with Reach and Soul Bond that says, as long as it's paired with another creature, each of those creatures has, when this creature dies, draw cards equal to its power. Now, obviously, if the Doomweaver dies, well, we're probably not going to draw too many cards, but yes, if we keep pairing this with new creatures coming into play, that we keep flinging at people, sure, we're going to draw an absurd amount. Or we can just draw cards right away with something like Disciple of Bolas. It says, when it enters the battlefield, sacrificing another creature, you gain X life and draw X cards, where X is that creature's power. Again, for just 4 mana, this X value can very easily be in the double digits. In fact, the vast majority of the time it probably will be with this deck. Next up, yet another card that can draw us a ton of cards and gain us a lot of life. Let's talk about Momentous Fall. It's going to make us sacrifice a creature, and then we draw cards equal to the creature's power and gain life equal to its toughness. So if one of our massive creatures is going to die anyways, well, we can still get a ton of value out of it with this. Next up, there's Soul's Majesty, which says draw cards equal to the power of target creature you control. This is a very simple but very effective spell in this deck. Next up, there's Garruk Primal Hunter, a planeswalker that has 3-star loyalty, and it's got a +1 and a -6, but most likely, we're just going to go straight to that -3 and draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures we control. But you know, if we don't need to draw cards right then and there, sure, make some beast tokens. Why not? And speaking of Garruk, we also have his Uprising, which is the enchantment that says, when it enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Creatures you control have trample, and whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. So this card helps us out a ton. I mean, this just coming into play and drawing this card is nice. Giving our creatures trample is incredible. And yeah, this can just be a great source of card advantage throughout the game. Moving on, we've got Harmonize, which is a very simple spell. It's going to draw us 3 cards for 4 mana. And then Painful Truce can actually draw us 3 cards for 3 mana, and we lose 3 life, but that's going to be well worth it. To do so, we just need to utilize one of each of our colors for this spell, and we get that effect. Next up though, even our ramp can be benefited by our creature's massive power, so let's talk about Tanuki Transplanter. It's a 2/4 equipment dog because that's a thing that says whenever it or equipped creature attacks, add an amount of green equal to its power until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. And of course, it's got reconfigure for 3, so basically, again, this is like, hey, it's a creature when it's not attached, and if you want to attach to a creature, it's basically an equipment. And yeah, attaching this to a creature can be massive. Again, we go to combat with, again, let's just say Primal Protector, a 10/10. We swing, we double its power, and we can stack these triggers however we want, so double its power to 20. Then we say, cool, my 20 power creature's attacking, and it's equipped with this, I get 20 green mana. So have fun with your second main phase. And of course, outside of that massive ramp effect, we also have some more standard ramp spells with cards like Rampant Growth, Search for Tomorrow, Fertile Ground, Fauna Fertility, Migration Path, Scourge Tribe Elder, Edge of Autumn, Cultivate, Harrow, and Grow from the Ashes. Whew, that was a mouthful, but yeah, green's got plenty of fantastic ways to ramp. Green also has fantastic removal as well, with something like Beast Within, which can destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. This card is incredibly flexible, can take out basically anything, and yeah, can even take out one of our own things if we actually want to, and we need that 3/3. This can be a really fun play if later in the game an opponent is really low, and say it's just one-on-one at that point, and they've got like 6 life or so. Awesome, let's just take out one of our own things, go to combat, double it, and take them out either in combat, or, you know, unexpectedly take them out with a fling. But next up, of course, we've got some massive creatures that can help us with removal as well, with Cleanup Crew, Kogla, and Terastodon. Cleanup Crew is a 6/6 human citizen that has, when it enters the battlefield, choose 1. Destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, exile target card from a graveyard, or you gain 4 life. So obviously this can help us out in a lot of scenarios, and yeah, it's a 6/6, so 12 power, have fun flinging that. But of course, an even bigger creature is Kogla, a 7/6 ape that has, when it enters the battlefield, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. Also, when it attacks, destroy target artifact or enchantment defending player controls, and on top of that, by paying 1 and a green, you can bounce target human you control back to its owner's hand, and Kogla gains indestructible until end of turn. So first up, this is creature removal with that fight. It is artifact or enchantment removal on attack, and yeah, I mean, if we really want to make this indestructible, cool, we can bounce a human, and maybe even one that has an ETB like Cleanup Crew. But of course, if we just want to chuck this at a player as well, double it to 14 and have fun. And an even bigger creature though is Terastodon, a 9/9 elfin that has, when it enters the battlefield, it may destroy up to 3 target non-creature permanents. For each permanent put in a graveyard this way, its controller creates a 3/3 green elfin creature token. So yeah, get rid of 3 things, great. And again, if we really want to utilize one of our own things for that, cool, we get that elephant. And yeah, this is a massive elephant to just chuck at someone for essentially 18 damage with that double. But a creature that can get even larger is Serulf Realm Eater. It's a 3/3 that has, whenever a permanent opponent controls is put in a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1 counter on Serulf Realm Eater. And on top of that, at the beginning of our upkeep, if it has 1 or more counters on it, we can remove all of them. If we do, we exile each other non-land permanent with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of counters removed this way. So this can be a massive creature that we can chuck at someone, or, you know, a massive board wipe as well, and a repeatable one at that. And then we've got Casualties of War, which says choose 1 or more, destroy target artifact, target creature, target enchantment, target land, and target planeswalker. This is a very flexible spell that can take out a lot of things. Speaking of which, Gaze of Granite can take out a ton of things as well. It says destroy each non-land permanent with mana value X or less. So yeah, this is a very flexible spell that can help us out in a lot of situations. What can be really funny is if, say, an opponent has a token army and they think they're safe blocking with it, and we're just like, okay, X equals 0, let's get rid of all the tokens. You can't block anymore, goodbye. And now that we've talked about some removal spells, let's talk about ways to protect our own team with cards like Golgari Charm, Feign Death, and Undying Malice. Golgari Charm can actually do a little bit of both. It says choose one, all creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn, destroy target enchantment, or regenerate each creature you control. And then Feign Death and Undying Malice essentially do the exact same thing. They say, until end of turn, target creature gains. When this creature dies, return to the battlefield, tap down its host control, they +1 counter on it. So this can help us out in a lot of ways. Again, if a player is trying to take out one of our creatures, great, we can save it and it gets even larger, which again, that counter is essentially, doubly as effective with our doubling power. Or, even if we're the one who's getting rid of our creature, by flinging it, we can actually just get them right back again for just 1 mana. And make them even larger so we can fling them again for even more damage. But now that we've talked about every single non-land card in this deck, let's talk about the price. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, every single card in this deck is less than $1, so it's a very budget-friendly deck coming in with an estimated cost of $34. And also, keep in mind this estimated cost does include basic lands at 10 cents a piece, so you can save even more if you've already got those. And speaking of potential savings, you might be able to save even more by buying this deck on TCG Player and utilizing heavily played and damaged cards, which of course need a home too. Though do keep in mind that this estimated cost does not include the cost of shipping, which might vary depending upon where you live.